Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked at your family, the people you gave your best years to, and wondered, would they still love me if I had nothing left to give? Because this story isn't about strangers. It's about a mother, a widow, who thought her home was built on love, not ownership papers, until the night her own son stood in the living room, not 5 feet from his father's casket, and said, "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." He thought those words would end her story. He didn't know they were about to start it, because what he forgot, what most people forget, is that the quiet ones, the ones who keep the peace, remember everything, every payment, every signature, every sacrifice, and when she walked out of that door, she didn't leave empty-handed. She took something they didn't even realize she owned: the mortgage, the power, and the truth. So sit back and listen closely, because this isn't just a story about loss. It's about what happens when the woman they erased decides to write herself back into the deed. They say grief makes families come together. Whoever said that never stood in my shoes, still wearing black for my husband's funeral, still smelling of lilies and cold church air, when my son looked me dead in the eye and said the words that split my heart in two: "You don't live here anymore. Pack your things and go." At first I thought I misheard. The house was silent except for the ticking clock in the hallway, the same one my husband fixed every Christmas Eve. The casket had barely been taken from the living room. The priest's voice still echoed faintly in my ears, but then it happened. His hand, that sound, sharp, sudden, final, a slap. It wasn't just the pain that stunned me, it was the look in his eyes, cold, distant, as if I were some unwanted guest, not the mother who raised him with tired hands and empty pockets. His wife stood behind him, arms crossed, chin high, watching like a queen, waiting for the servant to leave her palace. She said softly, almost sweetly, "It's better this way. You'll be more comfortable somewhere else." Comfortable. That word echoed inside me like a cruel joke. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply looked at them, my son and the woman he chose over blood, over memory, and something inside me quietly shifted. I walked to my room, not slowly, not dramatically, just steady. My suitcase was still by the closet from the hospital. I hadn't even unpacked after my husband's last night on Earth. I didn't take much. Not the wedding china, not the photo albums, not even my favorite quilt. But I did take the one thing they never asked about, the one thing my husband and I signed together 37 years ago, when this house was just a dream belonging to 2 young people with empty pockets and full hearts. The mortgage papers, with my name, my legal, undeniable name, right next to his. They didn't know, because they never cared to ask. The cold air outside stung my cheek, but it was gentler than my son's hand. Snow drifted down quietly, like the world was apologizing for what they had done. At the end of the driveway, I turned back, not to look at the house, but at the roses my husband and I planted the year Andrew was born. They were covered in frost, just like me. I didn't sob, I didn't collapse. I just whispered, "You'll regret this." Not as a threat, as a promise, because they thought they were throwing out a powerless old woman, but they forgot I still owned half the house, and all of the truth. So what happens when a mother leaves her home with nothing but a bruised cheek, a suitcase, and the deed to the house her son thinks he owns? In part 2, the first consequence arrives, not at her door, but his. The motel room smelled faintly of bleach and stale coffee, but it was the first place that felt honest in a long time. No fake condolences, no whispers about inheritance, just 4 quiet walls and a bed that didn't judge me for existing. I didn't sleep that night, not because of the slap, not because of the words, "This isn't your home anymore." I stayed awake replaying something else, my husband's voice, weak, tired, but steady in those final days. "If I go first, don't tell Andrew about the documents, unless he hurts you. If he does, use them." At sunrise, I reached into my coat pocket. My fingers brushed against the edge of the bank's safe deposit key. Cold metal, cold reminder. By 8:15 a.m., I was standing inside Glacier Valley Credit Union. I wore the same funeral dress. The bruise on my cheek had darkened to a deep, stormy violet. A young teller looked up. "Ma'am, can I help you?" "Yes," I said softly. "Safe deposit box 117, and I need to speak with someone in mortgage services." She blinked, maybe at the bruise, maybe at the firmness in my voice, but nodded. Inside the private vault room, I opened the metal box. It was all still there. The original mortgage agreement, signed by me and my husband in 1987. Updated deed, naming us both as legal co-owners, backup will, notarized, and a smaller envelope, labeled in my husband's handwriting, "Only if he forgets who you are." I didn't cry. I just whispered, "Thank you." Then I walked to the mortgage office. A woman in a gray suit, name tag Jessica, greeted me with a polite smile. "What can I do for you today?" I sat down, folded my hands, looked her straight in the eye. "I'd like to stop all mortgage payments on the Carter property effective immediately and freeze the account." She hesitated. "Ma'am, do you have permission from the owner to—" "I am the owner," I said calmly. "Co-borrower, co-signer, co-owner. My name is on every document." Silence, then typing, then her eyebrows raised. "You're right." She looked almost shocked. "You have full authority to suspend payments." "Good," I replied. "Please process it now. 10 minutes." That's all it took. 10 minutes to stop a lifetime of being silent. I walked out of the bank into the cold December air, not shaking, not afraid, just steady. By morning, the house would still be standing, the locks would still work. But the bank? The bank would not. What happens when the son, so eager to throw his mother out, gets a letter from the bank that could take everything away? In part 3, the first crack in his perfect world appears. By the time I returned to my motel, the snow outside had thickened into a quiet, white curtain, the kind that makes the world sound softer than it is. I sat by the window, sipping weak tea from a paper cup, and waited for the storm. Not the one outside, the one I knew was about to begin inside that house. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, I got the first phone call. Not from Andrew, of course, from the bank. "Mrs. Carter," the woman said kindly, "this is Jessica from Glacier Valley Credit Union. We wanted to let you know the account adjustments have been finalized. You now hold full control of the mortgage account. The automatic payments have been terminated per your instruction." I thanked her and hung up, and then I smiled, not the kind of smile that comes from revenge. No, this was quieter, the kind that comes when the truth finally starts to breathe again. Meanwhile, across town, the house that used to be ours was buzzing with a different kind of energy. I wasn't there to see it, but I could picture it because I'd seen it before. The panicked phone calls, the papers spread across the kitchen table, the tone of disbelief in my son's voice when he realized life wasn't as simple as he thought. It was late that evening when the letter came. A crisp white envelope, official seal of Glacier Valley printed neatly at the top. He probably thought it was a receipt, or a notice, maybe even another payment confirmation. But when he opened it, that's when the silence began. Subject: notice of payment suspension and loan default warning. Details: due to co-borrower withdrawal of payment authorization, your property at 198% Rose Hill Lane is now considered in arrears. Please contact the bank immediately to avoid foreclosure procedures. I imagine he stood there in the kitchen, blinking at the words, reading them again, hoping they'd rearrange themselves into something else. His wife probably snatched the letter from his hands, reading it out loud in that sharp tone she always used when she felt cornered. "What does this mean, Andrew? Why are they saying default? Who is the CO borrower?" That's when the realization must have hit. The one detail they never bothered to notice, that house, every wall, every roof tile, every snow-dusted window, wasn't just his. It was ours, legally, permanently. And one of those names, mine, had just pulled the plug. I pictured him then, pacing the kitchen like his father used to do when bills piled up, except this time no one was coming to save him. He would call the bank, he'd argue, shout, demand answers. And the voice on the other end would say gently, "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Only Mrs. Eileen Carter can authorize further payments. The account is under her name." Her name, I hadn't heard those 2 words said with respect in a long time, but soon they would learn it, because the day he told me to leave, he thought he was sending away a burden. What he really sent away was the backbone of everything he owned. The letter was just the beginning. Next came the phone call, the one where he begged for help and discovered his mother wasn't the fragile woman he thought she was. The phone rang at 6:42 p.m. I was sitting by the motel window, knitting a scarf I'd probably never wear. Outside, the snow had turned to rain. Soft, cold, tapping against the glass like an old memory trying to get in. When I saw his name flash across the screen, my hand froze mid-stitch. Andrew. For a moment, I thought about letting it ring, just letting the sound echo into the room until it stopped. But something inside me, that same quiet strength that had carried me through hospital nights and empty bank accounts, told me to pick it up. Hello? At first, all I heard was silence, then a shaky breath. Mom? His voice was smaller than I remembered. Mom, it's me. We got this letter. Something about the mortgage, about payments being canceled. The bank said you. I did, I said. Another silence. He hadn't expected me to admit it so calmly. Why? He whispered. Why would you do that? You'll make us lose the house. I looked out the window, watching the raindrops race each other down the glass. It's my house, too, I said softly. At least that's what the papers say. He didn't speak for a few seconds. Then, the panic cracked his voice. Please, Mom, you don't understand. We didn't mean what we said. It was just grief and stress, and you meant every word, I interrupted. You said it wasn't my home anymore. I simply agreed. He took a sharp breath. Mom, please, don't do this. Think about Dad. He wouldn't want... I closed my eyes, and for a moment I saw my husband's face. The way he used to smile when the first snow fell, the way he'd quietly squeeze my hand under the dinner table when Andrew got excited telling stories. No, Andrew, I said quietly. Your father did want this. He prepared for it. He saw what was coming long before you did. What are you talking about? He asked, voice trembling. Check the will, I said. Page 6, clause 17 billions. Clause what? It's the one that says if you ever mistreat me, you lose everything. The silence on the line was thick enough to touch. Then came the sound, his chair scraping back, the phone shifting in his hand, his breath coming in short bursts. That's not... Mom, that can't be legal. It's notarized, witnessed, signed. He didn't know what to say after that. I could hear him swallow, could almost picture his face, the disbelief, the regret, the faint shadow of the boy he used to be. Please, he said finally, voice breaking. We can fix this. I'll make it right. I don't need it fixed, I said. I just need peace. And before he could say another word, I ended the call. The phone sat heavy in my hand for a long time afterward. I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I just let the rain fill the silence. Because for once in my life, I wasn't waiting to be heard. I had already spoken, without raising my voice, without slamming a door, without a single threat. The bank letter was just the beginning. Now came the reckoning. He thought the letter was bad. But when the lawyer called, he learned just how much his father had left behind, and how much his mother had already taken back. The day after that phone call, the air outside felt heavier, like the sky itself knew a storm was coming. Just not the kind made of rain or snow. This one was made of signatures, seals, and truths that had been waiting quietly in drawers and safe deposit boxes. By noon, I received a message from Megan Dale, the attorney my husband had trusted for years. Short, precise. The will is being opened tomorrow at 10 a.m. Would you like to attend or send representation? Attend? No, I wasn't going to sit in a room full of people who only remembered I existed when money was involved. But representation, oh yes, that I would send. The next morning, while they gathered in an oak-paneled office overlooking downtown Anchorage, I sat in my one-room apartment with a cup of black tea and my husband's wedding ring in my palm. The radio played softly in the background, an old country song he used to hum while fixing the fence. Across town, I imagined the scene perfectly. My son, sitting straight-backed in a suit he didn't earn, his wife flipping her hair, whispering to a cousin about plans for the house once the paperwork nonsense was over. Relatives gathered like crows, waiting to pick over what they believed was theirs by default. They thought this would be simple. They thought they would smile, sign a few papers, shake hands, and move on with their lives. But Megan didn't open with pleasantries. She opened a manila folder embossed with a golden seal and read aloud, "This is the last will and testament of Thomas Everett Carter, revised and notarized October 14, 2020. Eyes leaned forward, pens poised. Then she continued, slowly, clearly, in the event that my wife, Eileen Carter, is mistreated, disrespected, or evicted from the home we built together, my son, Andrew Carter, shall lose all rights to my estate, assets, and properties. In such a case, full control shall be granted to my wife." Silence, not respectful silence. Stunned, suffocating silence. Andrew tried to speak, but Megan raised a calm hand. "There's more," she said. She turned the page, and the sound of paper echoed like thunder. A supplemental deed, the mortgage and property title list Eileen Carter as co-owner and co-borrower. She may halt or revoke payment arrangements at any time without notice to any other party. Another silence. His wife shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered, "Is this real?" Megan placed the documents on the table one by one, the mortgage agreement, my name right next to his, a letter from my husband, sealed, notarized, the bank's response confirming the payment suspension, and finally, a USB drive, the recording. She pressed play. "This isn't your home anymore, get out," followed by the sound of flesh meeting skin, a slap, then silence. Somebody gasped, a chair creaked, my son's breathing faltered. Across town, I sat very still, staring out at the pale morning sky, because I knew what they heard in that room was not just proof, it was a lifetime of silence finally speaking. They thought the will was the end. They didn't know. There was still a letter from the husband no one had heard yet, and when it was read, even the lawyer had to pause. Inside that law office, no one moved, no one coughed, no one dared to even shift in their seat. The slap they had laughed about days earlier now echoed through the room like a verdict, but Megan, the attorney, was not finished. She reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a smaller envelope, faded, hand-addressed, sealed with red wax. My husband's handwriting, steady, familiar, unmistakable. To be read only if my wife is forced from her home or disrespected by our son. Andrew looked up then. His face was pale. His wife's hand slipped from his arm. The room leaned forward, not in compassion but in curiosity, like spectators at a train crash. Megan broke the seal. Her voice softened, not professionally but humanly, as she began to read, "My dear Eileen, if you're hearing this, then something has happened that I prayed never would. I know our son. I know he is not cruel by nature, but love fades when pride grows, and pride has been growing in that house like black mold. You were the foundation of our home, the one who held it together when I could not. You paid bills no one thanked you for. You stayed awake through storms no one saw. And I let the world believe I built everything, when in truth I only hammered the nails. You carried the weight. If Andrew has forgotten this, then let this letter remind him. The house was built by our hands, but saved by yours. When the roof leaked in '92, it was your savings that fixed it. When I lost the auto shop in '95, it was your second job that fed us. When the bank refused me the loan, it was your name, your credit, your signature that opened the door. So if he dares to call it his house, remind him. If he dares to raise his voice at you, remind him. And if he dares to put his hands on you, then my will shall put my hand on him. I chose you to finish our story, Eileen, not as a widow, but as the rightful keeper of our home and name. Don't stay silent. Don't let grief make you small. Stand, speak, and know. I loved you in every nail, every brick, and every mortgage payment we ever made. Thomas, by the time she finished, no one in that room could look at each other. Not out of sympathy, but shame. Andrew no longer looked angry. He looked like a boy again, lost, undone, sitting in the ruins of his own choices. His wife stared at the table, hands clenched, lips thin and pale. She wasn't smirking anymore. Not this time. And me? Across town, I folded laundry in silence, because I didn't need to be in that room to win. His words, my husband's final gift, were doing what I never had to do, speak louder than their greed, but this was only the beginning. Because once the will ended, the legal consequences began, and the first place they tried to run to for mercy was me. It was raining again that night, the kind of cold rain that makes even city lights look lonely. I was sitting in my small apartment, folding the same sweater for the third time, when I heard it, a knock, soft at first, then again, 3 times, hesitant, almost shy. For a moment, I thought maybe it was the landlord or a neighbor, but deep down I knew, some sounds you just recognize in your bones. When I opened the door, there he was, my son, standing in the dim hallway, soaked to the skin, hair plastered to his forehead. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes, bloodshot, the same eyes that once looked at me with love, now looked hollow, frightened, desperate. Behind him stood his wife, clutching a leather purse to her chest like a life vest. Her face wasn't angry this time. It was pale, almost ghostly. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking halfway through the word, "please, can we talk?" I didn't answer. I just stood there looking at him. The boy I'd carried in my arms, the man who had thrown me out. "Please," he said again. "Just 5 minutes." I opened the door a little wider, not as an invitation, as a test. He didn't move until I nodded slightly, and even then, he stepped in like someone entering a church after years away. His wife followed, her heels squeaking against the tile. They didn't sit, neither did I. He took a shaky breath. "Mom, I don't know where to start. The bank called, the lawyer. She's freezing everything. We can't touch the house, the accounts, nothing. We're losing everything." I said nothing. He tried to smile. A sad, small thing. "Look, I know I said awful things. I was angry. I was grieving. I didn't mean it." I tilted my head. "You didn't mean to hit me." That one landed. He looked down. I lost control." "No," I said calmly. "You found it. You just used it wrong." He flinched. His wife shifted uncomfortably beside him. "Please, Mom," she said suddenly, stepping forward. "We're sorry. We didn't understand. We just thought—" "That I'd roll over quietly?" I asked. She blinked, silent. For a long moment no one spoke. The rain filled the space between us, steady and patient. Finally, he said, "We're not asking for money, just time. If you could talk to the bank, restart the payments, let us make things right," I interrupted softly. "Right? You want to make things right?" He nodded quickly, hope flickering. "You can't," I said. He froze. "What?" I reached into the small drawer by the door and pulled out a single document, a folded deed, neatly sealed in a plastic sleeve. I handed it to him. He opened it, scanning the lines, confusion spreading across his face. "Property transfer," he read aloud, "to the Anchorage Women's Resilience Foundation." "Yes," I said quietly. "I sold it." His wife gasped. He stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. "You sold the house?" "I did," I said, "to women who need a safe place to start over. They'll turn it into a shelter for widows, mothers, and seniors who've been abandoned. Women like me." He shook his head slowly. "Mom, why?" "Because," I said. I finally realized something. He swallowed. "What?" "That home stopped being mine the moment you told me to leave. And now, it's no longer yours either." He thought losing the house was punishment. But what came next would strip away the last thing he had left, his pride. For a long moment no one spoke. The words "I sold it" still hung in the air like frost that refused to melt. My son stood there, holding the deed with trembling hands, not angry, not shouting, just empty. His wife stepped forward, her voice sharp but shaky. "You had no right." I met her eyes steadily. "I had every right, more than either of you ever did." She opened her mouth again, but this time, Andrew raised a hand to stop her. He looked at me, eyes red, voice softer than I'd heard since he was a boy. "So that's it? You're just done with us?" I didn't answer right away. I walked to the window instead. The rain outside had turned to sleet, sharp, glistening, relentless, a lot like truth. "I'm not done with you," I said quietly. "I'm done for you. I've spent my whole life fixing things. Meals, childhood scrapes, overdue bills, broken fences, broken hearts. But you're grown now. If things break, they aren't mine to mend." He looked at the floor, shoulders slumped. "What do we do now?" he whispered. "That," I said, "is the first real question you've asked me in years." His wife stepped in, frustration rising. "So you'll just watch us lose everything? Watch the bank take the house? Let people live in our home?" "Our home," I repeated softly. "You mean the one you told me I didn't belong in? The one you locked me out of?" She fell silent. Her jaw clenched, but no words came. Andrew sank into the small chair near the door, head in his hands. "I don't care about the house anymore," he said hoarsely. I want my mother back." Those words, they hurt more than the slap, because they came too late. I sat across from him. "I forgive you," I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the way things were. Some doors don't reopen. Some homes aren't meant to be lived in twice. He nodded slowly, tears spilling onto his palms. His wife stayed quiet for once. No arguments, no eye rolls, just silence. "I don't hate you," I continued, "but I won't shrink myself to make you comfortable anymore. I didn't leave the house to punish you. I left to save myself." I stood, gently walked to the door, and opened it. "You should go before the roads freeze." He didn't argue. He stood, folded the deed carefully, and placed it on the small hallway table. But then, he did something he hadn't done since he was a child. He wrapped his arms around me, not tightly, not confidently, but like a boy afraid I might disappear. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know," I said. He stepped back. His wife followed him out, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. I closed the door, locked it, not out of anger, but for peace. And for the first time in decades, the lock clicked for me, not against me, but while my son walked away in tears. The world outside had already started whispering. Family, neighbors, even strangers online, and soon, someone came forward with a truth that changed everything again. Word spreads faster in small towns than wind through pine trees. I didn't post anything. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even tell my sister. But someone talked. Maybe it was a bank employee. Maybe it was a cousin in that will-reading room. Maybe it was someone who saw my son's car parked outside my little apartment in the rain. Either way, by the end of the week, people knew. Some didn't believe it. Others pretended to be shocked, and a few whispered that I had gone too far. Too far? After being slapped in my own living room? After being told I didn't belong in the home I helped build? Funny how people only see the explosion, never the years of quiet before it. The first person who came to see me wasn't family. It was Helen. She's been my neighbor for 32 years, the kind of woman who drops off soup without asking and leaves flowers on your porch without ringing the bell. She knocked softly, like she was afraid she'd break me. When I opened the door, she just stood there, eyes shining with tears she hadn't decided whether to shed or hold back. "I heard," she said softly. I waited for judgment, pity, gossip. Instead, she stepped forward and wrapped me in the gentlest hug. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "I just wish you hadn't had to." After she left, I made myself tea and sat at the little kitchen table. The phone buzzed over and over. Family members who never called before suddenly wanted explanations, apologies, details. I ignored them, until one message stopped me cold. It wasn't from family, it wasn't from a friend, it was from my late husband's younger brother, Samuel. A man I hadn't spoken to in years, a quiet man who always stayed out of drama. His message read, "Eileen, I need to see you. There's something Thomas asked me to hold on to for you. If things ever turned bad with Andrew, it's about the house and the money." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Money? We never had any secret fortune. Everything was in that house. The small pension, the truck, my savings. There was nothing else. So why would Thomas hide something? Why give it to Samuel? Why now? The next morning, Samuel came to my apartment. He looked older, tired, like someone who had been carrying a box of secrets for far too long. He didn't waste time. He sat down, opened his worn leather bag, and placed a sealed envelope on the table. My husband's handwriting again. For Eileen, if Andrew forgets where he came from. Inside was a key, not to a house, not to a car, a key to a safety deposit box I didn't know existed. In another bank, under another name. My heart started pounding. "What's in it?" I whispered. Samuel looked at me, his voice low and steady. "Everything Thomas saved, everything he never told Andrew about. He wanted you to have it. If the day ever came when you stood alone. What was inside that hidden box? Why did her husband hide it from everyone, including their son? The truth about the secret account and the final betrayal comes to light." The key was small, silver, and cold against my palm. No label, no tag, just a number etched faintly across one side. Box 314. It didn't look like much, but it felt heavy, like it had been waiting years to be found. Samuel didn't say much as he placed it in my hand. He just nodded. "The box is in Fairbanks Trust Bank. He told me to give it to you only if Andrew ever turned on you, said you'd understand why." Understand? I wasn't sure I did. Not yet. The next morning, I took the first bus north. The snow was still falling, turning the world into a blur of white and memory. I kept the key in my coat pocket, fingers wrapped around it like a heartbeat. When I reached the bank, the clerk led me to a private vault room, quiet and cold. The air smelled faintly of paper and secrets. The box slid out of the steel wall with a heavy clink. My hands shook as I turned the key. Inside wasn't money, not at first glance. It was filled with papers, envelopes, and one small blue notebook bound in leather. I opened it, and there, written in my husband's careful block letters, were numbers. Dates, receipts, transfers, and at the very back, a total $246,800. For a long moment, I just stared. Then I noticed the note folded beneath it, his handwriting again. Eileen, you always worried about the bills, about losing the house, about what we'd leave behind. I didn't tell you this because I didn't want you to worry about protecting it. I opened a small investment account years ago. It grew quietly, slowly, but steadily. I wanted it to be our backup. But if you're reading this, that means I'm gone, and Andrew has become someone I don't recognize. So now, this isn't backup money, it's freedom money, enough for you to start again, somewhere safe, somewhere peaceful. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe anyone forgiveness. Just promise me one thing. When you finally use this money, make it count. Build something that gives you joy again. I set the letter down, blinking through tears I hadn't realized were falling. He had known. All along, he had known. Every quiet night he'd asked if I was okay. Every time he'd brushed off my worry with a tired smile. He had already been preparing, protecting me, even from beyond the grave. I took a deep breath, closed the box, and pressed my hand over it. Not out of greed, out of gratitude. Because this wasn't just money. It was proof. Proof that even when the people you love forget you, the love you gave still leaves footprints somewhere, quietly waiting for you to find them again. When I left the bank, I didn't head back to the motel. I bought a train ticket. Destination, Anchorage. Not to see my son, not to confront anyone, but to build something my husband had asked for, something that would last longer than betrayal. But as soon as she tried to move on, the past came knocking again, because once her son found out about the hidden account, he didn't just want forgiveness, he wanted the money. I thought finding that money, my husband's quiet act of love, would be the end of my story, something gentle, something private. But peace never lasts long when greed is nearby. I hadn't told anyone about the safety deposit box, not family, not friends, not even Helen. I packed my things, checked out of the motel, and booked a train toward Anchorage, planning to take a small cabin farther north, close to the mountains, far from the noise. But before I even left the station, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Mom, we know about the account, please answer." My heart dropped. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another message, this time from my son's wife. "It isn't fair for you to keep all of that. That money could help us save the house. It belongs to the family. Family." The same word she used when she told me to stay out of my own kitchen. The same word spoken before I was slapped and locked out. Funny how family only matters when money is involved. I left the station quickly, turning off my phone. I thought that would stop it. But an hour later, in the quiet waiting room of the bus terminal, I heard it again. My name, spoken out loud. "Mom?" I turned. There he was, my son, breathless, coat half-zipped, hair messy from running. Behind him, his wife, looking irritated more than apologetic. "How did you—" I started. "We tracked your ticket," he said, eyes desperate. "Please, just hear me out." I didn't answer. I sat down. He took the seat across from me like a man approaching a cliff. Carefully. He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But this money, it changes everything. We can stop the foreclosure, keep the house and the family. It's what Dad would have wanted." I looked at him carefully, weighing the words. "Would he?" I asked softly. "Would he have wanted me to be hit, humiliated, thrown out like a guest in a place I built? If you truly believe that, then you didn't know your father at all." His wife stepped forward, arms crossed. "You're blowing this out of proportion. You're being emotional. Just give us access to the account and we can—" I raised one hand. She stopped mid-sentence. "This money," I said quietly, "was not hidden from you. It was hidden from me." My son's eyes glistened. "So that's it? You're choosing money over your own son?" I shook my head. "No, I'm choosing peace over pain, freedom over fear." He looked away, jaw tightening. "We're going to lose everything." "No," I said gently. "You're just losing control." For a moment I saw it, the young boy he used to be, the one who held my hand crossing icy roads, the one who made me Mother's Day cards with crooked hearts. But I also remembered standing in my own living room, hearing, "This isn't your home anymore, get out." So instead of guilt, I felt something new, certainty. I stood, picked up my bag. "You still have a mother," I said, "but I no longer have to be your safety net." And with that, I walked away, but this wasn't the end, because someone unexpected stepped in. Not to take from her, but to stand beside her. Help comes from the last person she ever expected. I thought I was walking away alone. I thought when I left that bus station, with my small suitcase, my husband's letter, and the money he left hidden like a whispered promise, that I was choosing solitude. But sometimes, life gives you someone just when you've stopped looking. The bus was late. Snow drifted sideways across the parking lot. I sat on a cold metal bench, coat buttoned tight, watching my breath rise in little clouds. I was tired, not of walking, not of the world, but of fighting to be seen in my own family. Then, footsteps. Slow, steady, cautious, not desperate like my son's, not sharp like his wife's. I turned. It was Samuel, my husband's younger brother. We hadn't spoken much at the funeral. Grief makes people quiet or loud, and we both chose quiet. He was always the observer, the one who fixed broken radios and mended fishing nets while the rest of the world argued. Now he stood there in the snow, clutching a thermos in one hand and my forgotten umbrella in the other. "You walked out so fast," he said softly. "You left this behind." I didn't know what to say. "Thank you," was all I managed. He sat beside me, setting the umbrella gently in my lap. The thermos opened with a click, releasing steam and the familiar smell of cinnamon tea, my husband's favorite. "I knew he'd want you to have this," he said, pouring a cup and handing it to me. His hands were steady. For a long while we sat in silence, watching the snow swallow the road. Finally he spoke. "I knew about the account," he said. "Not the amount, not the papers, but I knew he was saving something. Every month, like clockwork, said it was for you. Not Andrew, not anyone else." That hit harder than any argument. "He told me," Samuel continued, "a woman can love her family and still lose herself in it. He said if anything happened to him, he wanted to make sure you wouldn't have to ask anyone for permission to keep living." The tears came then, not loud, not dramatic, just soft, like the snow. I didn't hide them. Samuel didn't look away. "You're not alone, Eileen," he said, "and you don't have to do this all on your own. If you need help, legal, financial, even just company, I'm here. No judgment, no pressure, just kindness." I sipped the tea, warm, familiar, like belonging. Then he added, almost quietly, "Thomas was proud of you. He didn't want you to be saved. He wanted you to choose yourself." Outside, the bus headlights appeared through the storm. I stood up. "I'm going to the cabin," I said, "the one near Lake Willow, just until things settle." Samuel nodded. "I'll drive you. Roads are icy." I hesitated, for the first time, not out of fear, but because someone cared enough to stay, so I said yes. As the bus drove past us, Samuel helped load my suitcase into his truck. No questions, no demands, just quiet loyalty. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was heading somewhere new, somewhere I chose, but peace doesn't come without a price. Back in town, my son was spiraling, and soon, the law came knocking on his door. While I was watching snow melt on the lake, my son was watching his world collapse. I didn't see it happen, but I was told later how the letter arrived at my son's door like a ghost wearing truth. It was noon when it came, delivered in a plain white envelope, no warning, just a bank seal and his name, Andrew Carter. His wife thought it was a statement, maybe an insurance form. She opened it first, and in seconds, her face drained of all color. Final notice of default. Mortgage payments suspended by co-owner and co-borrower Eileen Carter. Foreclosure proceedings will begin in 15 business days. They didn't even know I still was the co-owner. They never asked. I was miles away by then, sitting in Samuel's truck as pine trees blurred past and frost crept on the windows. He didn't speak much, didn't force conversation, just let the silence exist, safe, unjudged. Meanwhile, at the house, chaos broke loose. Andrew snatched the letter from his wife's hands. "No, this has to be a mistake." He called the bank, then called again, then drove there. It wasn't a mistake. Not only had I terminated the automatic payments, I had also requested the account be frozen to prevent unauthorized changes, and the bank confirmed it, politely but firmly. Only Mrs. Eileen Carter may reinstate payment authorization. By evening, the decorators they had hired to redesign my kitchen had packed up and left. The credit cards were declined. His wife smashed one of my old teacups in anger and screamed loud enough for the neighbors to hear, but silence answered her back. Back at the cabin, Samuel helped carry my suitcase up the wooden porch steps. The place was old and creaked like it remembered every winter. Inside, it smelled like cedar, dust, and freedom. No voices, no demands, no footsteps pacing outside my door. Just quiet. I made tea. We didn't talk about Andrew, not directly. Samuel only said, "He'll have to face himself now." I nodded, because deep down I knew this wasn't about revenge. It was about consequences, about truth finally having a voice. That night I lay awake listening to the wind scraping snow against the window. It wasn't loneliness keeping me up. It was something different, like my soul was adjusting to space I hadn't had in years. But peace doesn't mean the storm is over, because the very next morning, my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize, a name I hadn't heard in months. It was the lawyer handling my husband's estate, and her voice was urgent. "Mrs. Carter, Andrew has filed a claim against you. He thought he could take me to court. He thought I'd walk in alone, but he didn't know I wasn't the only one holding receipts. He thought dragging me into a courtroom would scare me. He forgot I'd already buried fear the day I buried my husband. When the lawyer called to tell me Andrew had filed a legal claim against me, I didn't shout, I didn't cry. I simply boiled water for tea. They claimed I had illegally sabotaged the family home, withheld inheritance, and acted out of emotional instability. Emotional instability. That was the word they used for a woman who raised a family, paid their bills, buried her husband, and survived being thrown out of her own home. But I didn't react. I prepared. By the time the court date came, snow had melted into slush across Anchorage, and the courthouse steps were slick with ice. Samuel offered to drive me. My attorney, Megan, met us at the door with a calm smile and a thick folder, my folder, with every document I'd kept for 35 years. Inside the courtroom, Andrew sat on the other side. He didn't look at me. His wife did, chin high, eyes sharp, like she still believed paperwork could erase the truth. The judge entered, papers shuffled. Voices quieted. Andrew's lawyer stood first. He painted me as an elderly woman overcome by grief, someone easily manipulated, someone who made irrational financial decisions out of spite. When he finished, Megan stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't perform. She simply pressed play on a small recorder. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." Slap. Silence. The courtroom froze. You could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing, the judge's pen stopped midair. Megan continued, sliding forward documents one by one. Proof I was co-owner of the home and mortgage, the supplemental will my husband signed, legally removing Andrew from inheritance if he harmed or evicted me. The foreclosure notice triggered by their failure to pay after I legally withdrew authorization. And finally, my husband's handwritten letter. The judge asked me if I had anything to say. I stood slowly. "My husband taught me to keep records," I said softly, "not to fight, but to protect. I didn't take their home, I just stopped paying for it." Across the room, Andrew lowered his head. His wife stared forward, jaw tight, refusing to blink. The judge leaned back in his chair. He looked at Andrew. "You brought this case," he said, "but based on the evidence, you're the one who should be answering questions, not your mother." The judge dismissed the case. But that wasn't the end, because what came next wasn't about law or money. It was about a son on his knees in the rain, asking a mother if love still lived in her heart. He came to my door in the rain, not as a son demanding, but as a man finally understanding what he'd broken. It was almost midnight when I heard the knock, not loud, not angry, just hesitant, 3 soft taps, the kind you make when pride is gone and apology is all that's left. I opened the door. There he was, my son, soaked from the rain, eyes red, shoulders heavy, as though the last month had aged him more than the last 10 years. His wife stood slightly behind him, arms crossed, but not with arrogance this time. With guilt. "Mom," he whispered. His voice cracked on the single word. I didn't speak. I wanted to hear what came next, not from his mouth but from his heart. He swallowed. "They're going to take the house, the mortgage, the bank. They said only you can stop it." His hands trembled as they reached for mine but stopped halfway, unsure if they still had the right. Then he dropped to his knees, right there, in the narrow hallway outside my small apartment. "Please," he whispered, "I know I don't deserve it. But I'm begging you. Help us. We'll fix everything. Just don't let them take the house." His wife stepped forward, her voice small. "We shouldn't have treated you like that. We were wrong. I was wrong. I didn't move." Instead, I reached into my coat pocket and handed him a clear folder. He unfolded it with shaking hands. First page, property transfer deed. His eyes scanned it once, twice, and then, disbelief. "You sold the house?" "To the Elder Hearth Foundation," I said quietly. "They're turning it into a safe home for older women who've been abandoned or mistreated by their own families." His wife gasped. You gave it away?" "No." I looked right at them. I gave it purpose. Tears spilled down Andrew's cheeks. "But it was our home." I shook my head gently. "It stopped being home the moment you told me I didn't belong there." He looked at the ground, and for the first time, not as a son, not as a man, but as a child who finally saw the cost of his actions, he whispered, "Do you still love me?" I stepped closer and put a hand on his head, like I did when he was small. "I always will," I said softly. "But love doesn't mean I'll let you hurt me twice." I walked back inside, and as I closed the door, I added, "I didn't keep the house, Andrew. I kept my peace." Click. The lock slid into place, not to shut him out, but to keep peace in. And if you're still here, thank you. Because listening to a story like this isn't easy. Some of us saw our own hands in hers, some of us saw our own children in him, and some of us are still living somewhere in between. But remember this: growing older does not mean becoming powerless. Silence does not mean surrender. Kindness is not weakness, and a woman who remembers can rebuild her life at any age. So if you've ever been made to feel small in the home you helped build, if your voice has ever been ignored at the table you once set, please know, you still matter. Your story isn't over, not until you decide to stop telling it. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes they're alone. This is Grandma True Stories, where forgotten voices are finally heard. Until next time, take care of your heart, and don't let anyone make you feel unwelcome in a life you built with love.